Nuxt with Leaflet. I went through quite a lot of pain when trying to integrate the two for my product. So today we're gonna do a quick tutorial on how to integrate Leaflet with Nuxt without any external module. Let's go. I'm on a fresh new project that I just created. We're going to use Nuxt v4 as it just came out and it's very cool. But if you're using Nuxt v3, there's no problem. It's just going to be a little different folder structure, but it's going to be basically the same. I already set up some stuff. For example, we are going to use NuxtUI for the UI because it's super aesthetic. I already set up some stuff like the fonts and a Tailwind CSS integration for VS Code IntelliSense, so it works correctly with Nuxt v4. This is what we had right now, so everything was correctly perfect. And now the first thing we want to do is we're going to install Leaflet and also Leaflet marker cluster, which is a plugin that will allow us to handle markers inside the maps. We're also going to install types because we are using TypeScript, as we are not crazy guys. So we're going to install Leaflet and also Leaflet marker. Okay, so we're also going to install into the dev dependencies the types for Leaflet and the types for Leaflet marker cluster. So the first thing we're going to do is just create our component. So we can go into the app, create a folder, and create our new component called the MapView. Now we can add this component to our main page, and we're gonna wrap it in a client only. As usually, we do not want to have basically map and Leaflet stuff on our server side because usually we don't need it. So we're gonna wrap in a client only and import our MapView. Go back to the MapView. Now the first thing we want to do is create some props for this component. So we're gonna define some props. So the first one is going to be the map ID. It's going to be mandatory because we're going to have to map this and use it to identify our map element. Then we're going to have the two options, so basically the width and a height. And this is because to give a width and height to our map component, we have to pass it through the style tag. And we can have some defaults here. Perfect. So what we're going to do is just have first a div, which has an ID equal to the map ID. And then we're gonna pass the style. Now I'm going to paste some CSS, which is already like styled using NuxtUI, so it's easier and faster. But you can always customize this by just inspecting the map and then extracting the class names. So I'm just gonna paste it, and you can find it in the repository. This is going to have already our map styled up using NuxtUI theme. So you can just adjust the NuxtUI theme and the map is going to basically be adjusted automatically. Now, what we want to do is just import the types we need from Leaflet here in script setup. Since we're not using any external module, we're going to basically import Leaflet dynamically. And we want to define some types because it's going to be easier. So what we're going to do is just define this type here, which basically is going to wrap the Leaflet instance types, and it's going to be much easier to work with it. And then we need some variables. It's going to be this tree. This is going to be a reference to the map, and this one is going to be a reference to the dynamically imported Leaflet instance. Then we're gonna have like some emits because it's always good to have events. I'm gonna have an emit on ready, and then we're gonna just have a few utilities method that we're going to use later. We can just pass them in. So it's going to be basically zoom in method, zoom out method. It's going to just increase by 1 the zoom of the map. And now we can go into the core functionality of the map. So what we want to do, as I said, is just import Leaflet dynamically. And we have, of course, we have to do it in the unmounted event because we just want this to be client-side. I mean, Leaflet can be used on the server side. Usually, like 99% of the time, there is no real usage in having like an SSL-ready map. So we're just gonna handle it client-side. And side here, we're going to do all the dynamic import. So we're gonna make this async. And the first thing we want to do is create the Leaflet instance. So this one, and then import the marker cluster. So we can do both. Just import the Leaflet, default Leaflet instance, and import also the marker cluster. Then what we want to do is create the map. So it's going to be Leaflet map. We're going to create the map, and we're going to bound it to the ID passed to the props, this one. And then we're gonna have some options. You can completely customize here, check there all the options that are available. I'm going to link this in the description, so you're going to have everything. So if you go to options, you have a lot of options here that you can use. For now, I'm just gonna use like some default stuff. Remove the zoom controls because we're going to basically have our custom built with NuxtUI. It's going to be much more sleek. We have an error here because it's requiring the map ID. Let's go back to the map. So once we created the map, we need to basically add the tile layer. I'm going to use like a default OpenStreetMap endpoint. The Leaflet works with any map endpoint, but for the sake of the tutorial, we're just going to use this one. Then we're going to have some properties for the attribution using some HTML. And now what we can do is just add this tile layer to our map. So after we created our tile layer, we can hook into the map ready event here. When ready, we're going to basically hook an event handler. It's going to be on map ready. We can create this. Now inside here, what we want to do is just emit our ready event. It's called the leaflet and the map. We're going to have error here. Probably the best thing would be just to give this as optional. And then we can put our ready ref to true. Now, if we go back to our index, we have our map view. We can go into here and we cannot see anything. Yeah, because we need to give it a height. So just give it a height 50 SVH. We're gonna save, go back here, reload. Okay, we have our map. Nothing is showing because we need to basically set the initial view. So we're gonna have like set view. And to do this like the correct way, we're gonna add some props. So we're gonna have like our center, and then we're gonna have our initial zoom, which is going to be a number, optional. We're gonna have some defaults here. So we're gonna have zoom as, I don't know, 6, and center, we're just gonna go and get the center of Rome because all the routes go back to Rome. So we're just gonna use Rome. Let's take the Colosseum, and our center is this one. So we have our center, perfect. Now we're gonna set the view. We're gonna have like props center, and then we're gonna have props.zoom. We're gonna save, go back here, and now we have our map. Everything works correctly. Just like this, we have a fully functioning map, and we have a reusable component that we can use wherever we want. We could also like put this client only inside here, but I mean, it's much more clear like this, in my opinion. Perfect. Now what we want to do is give this map component some more functionalities. For example, we want to show controls. And also later we want to basically enable the marker clustering. The first thing is just gonna handle controls, and to do that, just change a little bit the HTML here. So what we do is just for now duplicate this div, put the map div actually inside, cancel this ID because we already have one, and then we can change the style here of the map to 100%. We need to change this to single quotes. Why we did this? Because now we can basically give some tailwind classes to this. We're gonna use a relative, and then we're gonna clip the overflow, and we're gonna also give some rounded corners because it's much more cool. We go back here, we see we have our rounded corners. We can also make this map a little bit smaller, so 50%. So it's a little bit more nice. We can also give it some margin top, reload. Now we're gonna develop the controls. First of all, we're going to check on the props if we want to actually include controls. Maybe we do not, so perfect, we can go new line with this. We do a div, and what we're going to do is just give it an absolute. We're gonna place it on the center bottom here. So we're going to do absolute, bottom 0, right 50%, perfect. And then we're gonna translate on the X 50%, so we're centering ourselves. Some padding, which is nice, flex, even center, give it some gap. We're gonna give the default to the controls to true. Now we're gonna have 3 controls, one to zoom in, one to zoom out, and one to center on the markers. So the first one is going to be a button from the NuxtUI. So now we're gonna have a new button for the zoom plus with the icon. We're gonna give it also like some IRZ. Okay, perfect. We have our controls. They're not really visible, so what we're going to do is just change this to soft variant. Perfect. We have our 2 controls and it works perfectly. And now what we're going to do is just include the functionality of the markers. We're going to basically inject the markers on the unmounted. We're gonna pass the markers as props. We're gonna clusterize them in on the unmounted and then display them. We just need some marker definition interface. It's going to have coordinates, an ID, a pop-up, which is going to be basically an HTML string, the onClick event, and some options directly from the Leaflet package. Now we're gonna define some markers here. So we have some markers, which is going to be an array of marker definition. In the unmounted, after we add the tile layer to the map, we're going to basically have a new function called inject markers. So the first thing we're going to do is basically create a cluster group. Perfect, we create our cluster group, and then we're gonna have like an array of layers, which is going to be an array of all the cluster layers. Then we're gonna iterate through the markers, paste this code here. What we're doing here is just taking the markers and for each marker, basically adding it to our layers of the marker, because each marker in Leaflet is considered as a layer. Just seeing if we want to clusterize the markers. If we do want, we just add to the cluster group, otherwise we just push the layer. And we need to add this prop here, optional boolean with the default. Then in the end, for all the layers that we added here, we're going to just push to the map. I have some markers here already defined, some Italian cities. Take these markers in the index, default markers as marker definition. And we can put them in here into our map. Hit save, go back to our map, reload, nothing happens. Why nothing happens? Let's see. Okay, so nothing happening is because we forgot to actually add this cluster group. So in the case we are clustering, we are not adding this cluster group to our layers. Just push the cluster group to layers, go back to our map, and now we have our markers here correctly displayed. As we see, we already have basically the styling of the clusters like related to our NuxtUI theme. And this is basically coming from the CSS that I pasted down here, so you can check this. If we go to our index page and now disable clustering, put cluster to false, and now we see that we have all markers which are not clustered. Now what we do is just add a small control here that will allow us to basically center the map. So whenever we go around, we just hit this button and just center on all the markers. Enable clustering, go back to the map view, and create a function called fitView with an optional parameter, whether we want to animate or not the movement. And this function, what is going to do is just fit on the markers if we have any markers, otherwise just fit on the initial center of the map. First, check if we have like markers. We're going to basically compute the bounds of all these layers. And to do that, we can do basically this function from Leaflet. Again, you can go check the documentation, but what we're doing is just computing the bounds in lat long terms. And then simply we can just fit these bounds to our maps like this. So I'm just gonna give it some padding, some max zoom, so it's not going to zoom too much in. We can also reduce a little bit, max zoom 14, and then whether we want to animate or not. Otherwise, just center our map on the initial center and the zoom. And what we can do is directly fit the view at the beginning. So we can go here and inject the markers, and after this we can just fit the view without animating because it's the first entering. And now we're going to add a control, duplicate this button, and here neutral, and then we're gonna change the icon to this very cool icon here. Okay, let's do this and this. Let's go back here. And now we have our control here. So we see if we, for example, zoom out and go some like in some other places, then we hit center and we're going to be basically centered on the map. We can also animate this. At the moment it's not animating. So we can go here in the fit view function, and for the animate, just put the default. So we can just put a default to true. And then if we click, we see we basically just animating back to the center. And it's very cool. We have also our zoom in and zoom out functions, which is very cool. And we can see the markers are basically working perfectly. The last thing I want to show is that we can also basically have a pop-up, of course. So whenever we click on a marker, it's going to just display a pop-up that we can hook into the on-click, navigate to a certain page or whatever we want. So to do that, we have to basically specify a raw string as HTML to display inside this marker. So if we go back to our map view, we can see at a certain point here that if we have a pop-up in our marker definition, what we're doing is just creating the element and binding the inner HTML to this to the HTML defining this pop-up. Now we go back to the index, and we can, instead of directly returning as marker definition, we're going to basically map them a new marker definition in which the ID is the m.id. Oops. Then we have the chords as the m.chords, and then we're gonna have a pop-up. We can also give this a type. To start with, we can just display some text. Okay, and then we can also give it on a click event. We can maybe lock the target, and then we can delete this, hit save, go back to the map, reload. If we click on the marker, it's going to show this little pop-up. If we click on the pop-up, it's going to console log our target, which is exactly what we wanted. And you can basically customize this pop-up how much you want. As an example, this is how it looks on my product for scuba divers. So we have basically, you have dives and you can customize how much you want. You can just display information, and when you click, you can navigate to whatever route you want. The cool stuff is that the code is exactly the same. The styling is adjusting on the styling of the application, because of course it's pulling out the colors and the styles and everything from NuxtUI. So we basically have, if you see also, the background is going to be perfectly aligned, and this is very cool. We can also like center this text because it's driving me crazy, and give it a Tailwind class, because you can use actually Tailwind classes inside the HTML of the pop-up. Because it's just going to render inside the DOM, so Tailwind CSS is going to perfectly work. Hit save, reload. Now, one important reminder here is that if you see here, we're basically binding HTML, raw HTML inside our markers, so we effectively running HTML inside our DOM. As you already may notice, this is a security concern. Up to a certain point. What I mean, so always when you're creating a pop-up, never ever use HTML coming from, I don't know, third-party services or whatever, from clients. You have a form where they input some field and then you display this HTML. No, never do that. Of course, if you're doing it yourself, so if you're hard coding the HTML like this inside your code with some like normal text like this, which is not defined by the user, but instead is coming directly from our application, it's totally fine, there's no problem. But it's actually the way like Leaflet it's supposed to work with this pop-up, so it's up to the developer to actually be concerned about security stuff. Remember, never put not sanitized HTML inside a pop-up here, because it's going to basically execute. To show you what I mean, what we're going to do is just hook on the onClick event here and just display some alert. If we do it like this, you see that basically we are hooking into the onClick inside the paragraph. If this whole string is coming from a user or like from third-party service, they might be inject this and basically do cross-scripting. So if we do this, go back to our map and reload, they can basically execute code inside your DOM, which is extremely dangerous. So be very careful about this stuff, because it can really break your websites and your security. So just to recap what we did, we just created a component that we can reuse wherever we want. We didn't use any external module. You have full control. It takes a little bit more like time to set up, as you saw. Once you basically develop this component, you can use it wherever you want in any project. So this is it for the tutorial. Hope it was useful for you, and slap a like if you liked the video. If you didn't like the video, like I'm gonna post a lot of these tutorials, because like shipping 5 products, I had a lot of stuff to develop, and so I have a lot of stuff to share. So if you're interested in this stuff, just be sure to subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.